Welcome to Taking Care of Mom and Dad. Today we have Jennifer from Dementia Connection Institute by NeuroScience. Thank you, Jennifer, for taking your time and answering some of our questions.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off with is if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what attracted you to this field.
Absolutely. So, my journey is a little bit different than most clinical psychologists. Most clinical psychologists either go into research or they want to open up their own practice and see patients. And although I've delved into both of those things, I went into psychology really as a journey to give back. Earlier in my life, I went through some of my own mental health challenges, and because I work with such wonderful folks and I've really found what worked for me, I knew that I can give back to the industry. And so I dedicated my schooling career in psychology. And so from there, I started off my first half of my career in mental health and worked in a wide variety of settings with a kind of an array of clientele. And when I finally kind of graduated with my postdoc, I really fell in love with working with seniors. And out of my postdoc, during my postdoc, I actually started working with seniors. It was at the Hines VA here in Chicago, Illinois. It was a research project between Hines and Northwestern University. And it was really educating seniors on how to stay healthy using technology devices. And so that was kind of my first stint at educating seniors on brain health and how to really age gracefully, if you will. And so after that, I then kind of fell into senior living, working in skilled nursing, and first in behavioral health. So there was still a wide variety of ages, anywhere from 18 and up. But then quickly, the company that I was consulting with, they really needed help in memory care. And so the memory care consultant at that time had moved away. And so I started to dabble in that, and I knew that was my calling. And so kind of another gesture of people say, well, I got into dementia care because I had a loved one who had it. And that was not the case for me. I just absolutely fell in love with working with the individuals who had dementia, the staff, the families. And I knew there was a lot of need there. And so from my kind of previous calling, I knew I could do more work in this industry. And so I started to really work hard in dementia care to understand what people needed, where the pain points were. And then from there, kind of the sky was the limit. So I consulted for several years with this company and was able to revamp their entire memory care program, which brought me such great experience. Now, along that journey, I did have a grandmother-in-law who unfortunately did have Alzheimer's disease and has since passed. So I was a great asset to the family. So I do have that personal piece in there, but it wasn't the main reason why I went into dementia care. So, as I started to develop and create a network in the industry, I was able to create the dementia connection model, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. And it really helped to kind of get that off the ground and running, because many people were attracted to understanding what it was, and they were able to implement it so easily. And so from there, when I transitioned from my consulting role for that specific company, I opened up my own company called Dementia Connection Institute with my business partner. And we've been training ever since. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell.
That's amazing. One of the reasons I reached out to you because there are many dementia, Alzheimer's training programs out there. But I find that there's few that understand the science behind what you just went through and the education that you have. I think that you bring a different spin to it.
Thank you.
And I think so for me, I'm one of those who likes to understand why something is happening. And I think you bring that part of that to it, the
Yeah.
understanding, the science behind it. And I really feel that that helps caregiver hands-on training part of it, but then for them to actually understand why they're making that next action, like why are they responding this way and how do I compensate for that? And I think that's great for caregivers that are in the field and then for family members, because a lot of family members don't
Absolutely.
understand that. And I think it
Yeah.
was it was interesting. This past week, I interviewed with someone, and they had made a comment about shame on me if I don't understand what is going on
Mhm.
with my loved
I
one.
just want to say what awareness for that individual to say that. I commend her because often we hesitate on what we don't know to admit that to people. But I do encourage caregivers, whether it's a family caregiver or it's a healthcare professional, educate yourself, because it's really important to understand the disease in order to truly provide good care. And I've said that from day one. You can't just be kind of thrown into a situation and wing it, if you will. People need to really understand this disease to be successful, because not only, of course, is the person that you're caring for potentially hurting because you're not providing the best quality care, but also you're hurting because you feel unsuccessful. You feel not so confident in what you're doing, and it just weighs on your mental health. And so to better educate yourself, you're building your confidence and your competence in this, and you feel better, like, okay, I'm really doing a good job. And that makes you want to continue to provide good quality care. And this, to be vulnerable and be aware of that and admit that, I think is just so profound. So kudos to her, and I hope she
Yeah,
continues to educate herself.
yeah.
So
And another thing that we were talking about is it's the timing. If you find out a family member has something, that is the time to
yeah.
start getting educated on it. Because sad to say, this disease obviously um, has many different stages. You go from working for a company to you and your partner going on your own.
Honestly, I knew that where I was consulting at, that I had hit kind of my ceiling. But there was more to be done in this industry. For me, I had so many tools in my tool belt of what I could share in the industry, that I wanted to do it in a way that people could better receive it and that they could implement it right away. And so I knew that to be able to create that path would be me doing it on my own. And so I think in some respects, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. My father owned his own carpet business. And so I think it kind of is in the blood a little bit.
Yeah.
But I didn't really discover that until I went into senior living. I didn't really expect to create and all of that. It just kind of happened with always this fire to, be able to give answers to caregivers and to be able to give them a better way to do things, because I saw such a struggle there. And I remember telling myself way early on, there's just got to be a better way. And that's when it all started for me. And through that process, I was able to write a book with Johns Hopkins on the dementia connection model. And I remember a mentor of mine, and she said, "You have to write this book. You have to." So when the book came out, I said, "This is my time to go out on my own,"
Yeah.
and that's what launched me from there. So it's been an exciting journey.
Oh, that is, and I can't imagine the amount of people that you got to meet in the industry. And that's why I love this industry. There's so many connections. What is the name of the book? Can you go into that just a little bit?
Absolutely. So it's called The Busy Caregiver's Guide to Advance Alzheimer's Disease. And it's a workbook style, which is really nice because you learn about the dementia connection model, which within that model, you learn about dementia, really down to the science of what's happening in the brain, and why things are happening, why can't mom do this anymore, or why does she act like this, right? You learn a lot of that. And then in the model, you learn kind of the how to, what are tools that I can use every day in implementing this model. So I go through every aspect of care, ADL care, communication, handling negative response behaviors, and how do you apply the model to each of these aspects. And at the end of each chapter, there is a workbook, like a table where you can say, okay, I used this tool and it worked, or I used this tool and it didn't work with my loved one, right? So by the time you're done with the book, you have a whole set of tools that work specifically for the person you're caring for, or the group that you're caring for if you work in a facility. I've been told it's an easy read. I've had really been a fun journey because I have people send me pictures of them reading it on a beach or at a pool, or, things
Yeah.
like that, and so people say it's an easy read, easy to understand, that was the intent, was that
Right.
caregivers, they're so busy, whether they're working in the industry or they're caring for their loved one at home and having a full-time job and caring for another family, right? their own family. And so I want it to be really easy for them to pick up on the concepts and implement it right away. And that's what the feedback I've been given, which is great.
Yeah.
So, and the book, it's really can be found at anywhere where you can buy books. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Johns Hopkins Press, and then a couple of other small mom and pop shops too. So,
and we'll put the links for that too below.
excellent.
So for everyone. And I like the part that you added a guide to it. I mean, that's got to be so, because there's a difference when you read the book. A lot of times these books, you don't have anywhere to jot down all this. You can highlight, but you don't have anywhere to, but it's nice that you have that so they can write down what's working for them, what's not working for them, and then be able to figure that out. I discussed it with you or read an article that you had. My thing is I'm fascinated by your program and the non-use of medicine.
Yes.
In it. Can you give us just a couple of examples of
Absolutely. You know, just kind of a little bit of a history on this. You know, one of the reasons my business partner and I, her name is Jessica Ryan, she's a biologist, we decided to open up the institute was because too much medication is used in trying to, I will use the word control, I'm putting quotes around that, people with dementia, because you know, what a lot of the psychotropic medications do are calm them, right? But sometimes it calms them too much to the point where they aren't able to interact, socialize, think clearly, you know, those kinds of things. And the intention behind it is not malicious. It's just that a lot of folks don't have other tools that they could use, right? And why would we want to calm someone is, you know, if they are wandering into unsafe areas, if they are becoming agitated to the point where they're becoming aggressive, right? You know, oftentimes people are concerned about them falling, right? So they think the solution is, well, let's calm them, right? And let's calm them with medication. But these are not ways to necessarily bring that about. And it may not even be a desire of the person to be calm in that moment. And so we need to really be respectful as to, you know, every time we ourselves as humans talk or do something, we don't want to be shushed, right?
Right.
And neither do people with dementia. And so we need to understand that there are better ways to connect with people with dementia in helping them thrive. So in the dementia connection model, we talk about the use of sensory-based tools, because with a little bit of science behind this, the way that the brain works, there's a physiological and a psychological reaction that happens when we use sensory-based tools. Physiologically, what happens is anytime we take in sensory stimuli, whether it's negative or positive, our limbic system becomes activated at some point, usually within seconds. What in the limbic system, we have two important organs. We have our amygdala, which generates our emotions, and our hippocampus, which generates memories. So whenever that stimuli comes in, it will make us feel a certain way, and we'll have a memory tied to that event. Now, with people with dementia, it's usually the person in front of them. It's usually what's around them. They can't necessarily depict maybe what's going on or who you are or what your role is, but they know how they feel with you, right? So that's where the memory component comes in. It's not going to be something where they hold on to that forever, but they can hold on to it if it's a very meaningful type of connection, okay? So that's the physiological side of it, but then what takes over from there is the psychological side of it, which is very well known in our industry, cognitive behavioral theory, which is when you have thoughts and feelings, it impacts your behaviors. So the psychological side is once you feel something, again, whether negative or positive, it's going to influence your behaviors, and it's going to influence either negative or positive behaviors, depending on what that stimuli was, right? Now, the difference between with you and I is that, you know, who are more cognitively intact is we can decide to turn off the stimuli, move away from it, not pay attention to it, change the way that we feel. We can do that because we have our faculties. With people with dementia, and this is very similar to very young children, is that they're just influenced. They don't yet have the coping tools, and people with dementia don't think to use coping tools to change the way that they're feeling or thinking, and then ultimately how they're behaving. So what happens is what we want to use within the dementia connection model are positive sensory-based stimuli. So we have to think about, what are they seeing? What are they hearing, tasting, touching, smelling that they enjoy? And we want to try and use that as much as possible throughout the day and consistently. So for example, if every morning my goal is to brew coffee because my mom loves coffee and the smell of it, I'm going to brew that every single day. What's that's going to signify to her immediately is the sense of, if it's enjoyment, if it's calm, whatever that brings for her, that's going to help her feel those feelings in that moment. She's going to have that memory of you because she's going to see you turning on every day. And her behaviors are going to be either happy or calm or joyful, whatever coffee brings for her, right? Now, we want to turn that on every day. And in about 4 weeks, she'll start to learn that coffee means it's morning time. So it will bring her actually a sense of orientation or time of day. It will bring her a sense of purpose. She'll know it's morning time and what's my routine in the morning. And so we want to be able to do that every single day, right? So that's kind of an example of how the dementia connection model is implemented, right? It could be implemented proactively to set up this routine so she understands time of day, purpose, all of those things, and to obviously influence positive feelings, memories, and behaviors. But it could also be used in the moment when maybe there is a negative reaction. There was something that happened in the environment, or maybe with the person in front of them, or whatever it might be, right? We can change that for them because they don't think to do that. They don't have the problem solving skills to change the way that they feel based on what's happening in the environment. So we do that for them. So for example, let's just say they are bored and they are wandering around and getting into things that could be potentially unsafe. We're going to start to engage with things that are visual, tactile, maybe auditory, that they really like to do, right? So whether that's maybe knitting or crocheting, maybe was mom's pastime and absolutely loves to do it. We're going to break out those things and have her do those things. So she'll be more engaged in the knitting and crocheting because that's something she likes to do rather than the wandering. So it's going to change her feeling from boredom to potentially enjoyment, or maybe she feels she's more concentrated, something like that, right? That's going to eventually then change that memory of that event, and then it's going to change behaviors where she'll be engaged and not getting into unsafe things, right? So you can use the dementia connection model instantaneously,
Right.
in terms of if it's happening in the moment, and you can use it proactively to set up a structured schedule, which is nice too. But the key here is to get to know the person. So if you already know them, fantastic, because they're your loved one. But if you don't know them, maybe you work in a healthcare facility, you get to know them, whether it be through a medical record or talking to family or just observing them, right? Simply, you can do that too. And it's kind of trial and error of what they like. And so it's really kind of thinking that at your forefront at all times is, would they like what they're seeing right now? Would they like what they're tasting, touching, smelling, all those kinds of things. Now, the one thing I do want to note is that with olfactory, which is what we smell,
Mhm.
is unfortunately a lot of folks with Alzheimer's specifically, they tend to lose their sense of smell over time. Not everybody, but it is common.
Right.
And so we always recommend, in replacement of other things that they would typically smell, we use essential oils. So we have a robust aromatherapy program that we can implement individually in the person's home or in within organizations like senior living facilities and things like that, where we would teach about essential oil use and the safe way to use them, because essential oils are still effective even when you can't determine the smell. And the reason, because they're broken down in such a small molecular size that they cross the blood-brain barrier, so they can still get into that limbic system and have that influence that we're looking for, and be able to create intentional therapeutic benefits from feelings, memories, and of
Yeah.
course behaviors. So
That's something that's ingrained in us. And
absolutely.
the other thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned, what I thought was interesting, and it's probably great for facilities, because I can imagine that you can use a lot of this training. Like, I was thinking of even in the morning, like bringing them into a recreation room and having that sensory, that
Mhm.
do they do that there, like be able to do that kind of training? And
Well, it's kind of twofold. I think that a lot of organizations do have a sensory program,
Mhm.
But unfortunately, they don't use that program until folks are in their late stages. And
Ah,
this program can be used at any time for people with dementia. And so I always say your entire program should be sensory based. It's not just for those who are lower functioning or what we call late stage, dementia. So I think that obviously more education and training is needed because
yeah,
I think that they're selling themselves short. Um, Now we would of course create the sensory based activity by level of function, meaning that by stage, right? So if the person is earlier stages, we would have more high functioning sensory based activities.
right,
Middle stage, would be moderate and so on and so forth, right? Um, I think there is a lack of good quality education in senior living, whether it be from independent living all the way through memory care, home health. I think there is a lack of quality training because obviously it comes down to funding.
right,
Oftentimes, money is used in different ways. Um, and I would encourage, those kind of decision makers to really look at the long term, the more better education that you have for your staff who work with people with dementia can prevent so many of the kind of money that's thrown out the window
right,
when it comes to things like falls and overuse of psychotropic medication. These are all things that impact their 5-star rating. And when their 5-star rating is impacted, it decreases the referrals and it decreases the relationship with the hospitals. So at the end of the day, you need to start from the beginning, and the beginning is training. And if you have better training, you're going to retain your staff because the staff feel that you're investing in them. And I'm not talking about online training where they
no,
go
no,
on and
yeah,
they quickly skip through because they want to get it done and they answer the questions and hope they get 100%, because let's be real, that's what happens. Or if they can't skip through, they're scrolling on their phone until the screen is ready to go to the next thing. They
yeah,
learn nothing about dementia care. They're just checking the box. And for those who do read it, it is still very hard to apply it when there's no one around to ask questions. There's no real examples in terms of like something that's in front of you. So you can't really replace live training,
right,
right?
yeah,
And so folks, those CEOs, they need to start from the beginning and train their staff so it can prevent a lot of the wasted money, and it can improve a lot of what their care is. So that way they do get more return on their investment from, being able to provide that quality training. Now, what we did was we created a certification program where people become certified in the Dementia Connection model. So they learn the science behind dementia, they understand the disease better, and then they walk away with over 100 tools that they can implement right
wow,
away, which is really wonderful. And then we apply that dementia connection model to every aspect of care. So within that 6-hour training, you're learning, how do I apply it to ADL care? How do I apply it to communication, to behavioral management, and so on and so forth, right? We even end the training with a 1 hour on self-care, because that is needed for all of us in this industry. And oftentimes we talk about it and we say we should do it, but it doesn't
right,
happen. So we teach our caregivers who go through this that, they need to focus on themselves as well as an important part of this journey. And the certification is actually open to all caregivers. So it's any healthcare professional, anybody who works in senior living. It's also open to any family caregiver who maybe doesn't work in senior living, but they just care for their
oh,
mom or
wonderful,
dad.
okay, yeah,
They can take it as well. We do offer now a non-certification option, so you can take the course without being certified if that's not really of interest to you. Maybe you just want the information. You can take the course that way as well. So it's been something where people can raise their credibility. They can feel confident and competent, after taking this. It's something they can implement right away. So it's definitely, we're trying to get the word out there about that.
yeah,
We have dementia connection specialists. That's the certification. We have folks all over the United States and also in other countries. And then we have a team of trainers as well, dementia connection specialist certified trainers. So we're looking to expand that team right now because I think that more and more people can benefit from the training itself.
yeah, it's wonderful. So now I've seen this in a lot of other countries. I think they focus more on that one and that physical, let's put it that way,
Mhm.
training rather than just having it online, like you said, where they just watch
Mhm.
something and check it off. We see that. I know recently I just did a program with the Montessori training.
Mhm.
Um, and it's in Europe, it's amazing some of the stuff that
Mhm.
they have put out there that just really focuses on what you're doing, like what you're saying, that
Yes.
actual physical
Yes.
training in there. Companies and facilities listening in, can you just sum up what you feel personally, why it's so important, and what your, even though you just went through what your company offers, but just sum up why it's so, and why you feel your passion for it, why you feel it's so important that they get educated.
Yeah, well, I think that the gap with home care, and this can kind of also go to home health, and is they're, often they seek services, right? The family seeks services because, they either need help with mom for medication management, or they need help with ADL care, or they need help with cleaning around the house, or, helping mom run errands, those kinds of things. So these are all physical acts. And we look at this as we're providing these physical acts, and that's what they're paying for, right? The family. But the reality is we as humans don't work in a physical entity. you
Yes.
know we have to look at the person from a holistic view, and in that physical body there are thoughts, there are emotions, there are needs, there are preferences, there are cognitive functions that are, you know, unfortunately, that are challenged, right? And so we have to look at the whole person. We're not just treating the physical entity of these tasks that need to be done. We've got to move away from this task-oriented mentality and move to a holistic view that we're treating the whole person. And so the people who are with them every day need to understand, what if they have cognitive challenges, what are they? How does that impact their ability to take care of themselves, interact, socialize, connect with people, right? How do our thoughts and feelings work together, and how does that influence our behaviors, right? So understanding the physiology, understanding the psychological part of it, it's really important because it's going to set everybody up for success. Not only, of course, the person that they're caring for, but that caregiver. And that caregiver is going to love what they do every day, more so than they do now, because they understand what's going on in the brain, what's going on in the mind of that person, better than just what physically they need, right? And so, kind of going back to what I said earlier, I feel that we cannot provide good quality dementia care without proper education, because we have to understand what's going on. Part of that is us putting ourselves in that person's shoes to experience what it's like to have dementia. And that's a portion of what our training includes too, is just understanding. We have more like a visual aspect of it, just to kind of give you a piece of it. And it allows us to really say, like, wow, I had nurses take our certification program, and they would say something like, I've been a nurse for 25 years and I've never heard it explained this way. And I wish to God someone explained this to me 25 years ago.
Yes. Yes.
Because now I get it. And it's like the light bulb goes on, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we really have to understand what's happening. It's no different than you would really want your doctor, right, to understand, like your dentist, to understand teeth. If they didn't understand teeth, would you want them working on your teeth? No.
Right.
And if you had, breast cancer, wouldn't you want a doctor who specializes in breast cancer, and really understand it, to be able to provide the best quality care? Yes, of course you'd want that, right? These are things we have to think about. Dementia care is a specialty. It's a niche. It's not just something else we do, right?
Yeah.
We don't rope it in with everything else. So it shouldn't be like that, because it's a disease state no different than if someone has cancer, diabetes, COPD, right? And there's specialists for those, right? So why not invest in our staff to become specialists, right?
Thank you.
Specifically dementia
Yes.
connection specialists.
Yes. Yes. I completely agree, because if I were to call a company, that would be one of my first questions. If I had a family member,
Yes.
I wouldn't ask, I would ask for that certificate. I would ask, are
Mm-hmm.
they certified in this? And then how was the training? Like,
Right.
how were they?
Right.
Nowadays, that in home care, the percentage of people that we're taking care of is people with that dementia. People want to be home. They want to stay
Yes.
home. So more and more we're dealing with that type of care level. You could get one point across to family members individually. What would you like? What would you tell them?
I would probably say to them, something along the lines of, continue to educate yourself, because the more educated you are going to feel more confident and competent in this disease process, and you are going to understand how to connect better to your loved one, and you're going to enjoy the caregiving process more, whether you're providing it hands-on or you have others who do that. You're going to enjoy it regardless of your role, and be able to really enjoy what your original role was. So if you were daughter, son, sister, whatever it might be, right? You'll be able to enjoy that role more, because caregiving won't be as difficult. And I'm not going to say there aren't challenging times, because there are. So I'm not going to downplay that by any means, but I do want to say that you'll be able to enjoy your role better within that relationship, because you feel more on top of it. And just to feel achieved and to feel like you're mastering this, that's a huge gift you can give caregivers, because it is such a struggle often. So I would say, continue to educate yourself, because, even myself, being a specialist in this industry, I continue to go to continuing education and learn more about things, because there's more coming out about dementia care that we still don't know, right? We still don't have a cure. So there's much more we need to learn. So I encourage caregivers, continue to educate yourself, go to workshops, go to webinars, all those kinds of things I think can really help. And I understand that time is limited. So it's working that in, like it's a meeting at work, taking that time. And that's kind of part of self-care in that you are taking that time to really understand this, so you feel better about your journey along with your loved one.
And thank you for bringing that out, because I think a lot of caregivers leave that part out about the joy. They get so consumed, and they have the right to. Caregiving causes anxiety, stress, you name it. But when you're able to get educated on how to deal with certain situations, then you can bring that joy back to yourself and also the one that you're caring for.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for joining us today. And I will leave the information for Dementia Connection Institute below, and where people can find some of the helpful information that you have.